But everybody else's tobacco's toasted.
No, everybody else's tobacco is poisonous. Lucky Strikes is toasted.
It's fitting that we start this retrospective off with the pilot, not only because it's the introduction of the series, but also because of the backstory of the pilot script itself. For those who don't know, series creator Matt Weiner wrote the pilot 7 years before the series got picked up. It's what got him the job on The Sopranos, as David Chase was impressed with the writing. He actually recommended to HBO that they make Mad Men as a series once The Sopranos had finished, though for reasons we'll get into later in the video, that didn't end up happening.
It got me my job on The Sopranos about 2 years later, and that literally within a month, days of being there, David Chase sent it to HBO with a note on the top of it that said, "This should be your show after The Sopranos is over." And that was the last I heard from HBO.
Instead, the pilot was picked up by AMC, which at the time had never made an original scripted series. Their programming consisted of old films like Turner Classic Movies. However, they were considered a lower-class version of TCM, as they couldn't afford to license the best films, and would even later start adding in commercials, further hurting their credibility. Along with the threat of streaming, AMC decided that they needed original programming in order to survive. They had experimented with some reality shows, interviews, and documentaries already. Their first real success was Broken Trail, a Western miniseries starring Robert Duvall. Even though it's really a feature film that was split into 2 episodes, the series won 4 Emmys and solidified AMC's desire to produce more critically acclaimed content and draw attention to their network. All of this is to say that AMC wasn't anyone's first choice of a network. They were an unknown entity, and Mad Men only ended up there because no other network was interested. However, this ended up being a blessing in disguise. Since AMC had no experience in creating original series, Matt Weiner was able to pretty much do the show exactly as he wanted.
The network had never made a show before. Basically, there was a power vacuum. And I sucked up all the power because I realized that, I kind of knew how I wanted to do it.
Before we get into the episode itself, we should briefly talk about the title sequence. Set to A Beautiful Mind by RJD2, the intro shows a businessman in silhouette falling, surrounded by skyscrapers featuring advertisements from the period. The theme is pretty obvious even if you know nothing about the show, creating an ominous tone and linking consumerism and advertising with downfall. Whether that downfall is literal or metaphorical, we'll have to see. The title sequence is inspired by the intro of North by Northwest, as well as the Falling Man poster for Vertigo. Weiner has stated that Hitchcock was a big influence on the series and his writing. The silhouette always reminded me of Alfred Hitchcock Presents as well. After the title, we get a text explaining the name Mad Men. Apparently it refers to advertising men who work on Madison Avenue, and the fact that they invented the term for themselves is of course a statement about Don's invented identity, which we'll explore later. I've actually read that the term was never really used in real life, and the fact that they never actually say Mad Men in the show hints that this is here probably more for thematic reasons than actually being a historically accurate term that they used. The pilot episode is called Smoke Gets in Your Eyes. It opens with our lead, Don Draper, at a bar, working on an ad for cigarettes. He engages a black waiter to get his thoughts on cigarettes, and we see that Don's methods involve studying people and their behaviors. Don then goes to see his girlfriend Midge, an artist living in the village. He complains to her about the fact that he has no idea what to do about the fact that cigarettes are now being linked with cancer. Though he doesn't get an idea from her, they do sleep together. The next day we're introduced to the staff at Sterling Cooper, the advertising agency where all the characters work at. Peggy Olson is the new girl at work, starting as a secretary for Don. She's shown around by Joan Holloway, the voluptuous office manager who knows how everything works in the business. She emphasizes that Peggy's job is not only to be a support for Dawn, but also to be beautiful to hopefully find a man to provide for her, a statement about women's situations at the time. We're also introduced to Pete Campbell, a hotshot account executive at Sterling Cooper. Though about to get married, he's eager to sleep with every girl he can. This includes Peggy, who catches his eye immediately. Don warns him that if he continues with his behavior, he'll never get anywhere because no one will ever like him. After this, they meet with Rachel Menken, the daughter of the owner of Menken's department store. She wants him to help make Menken's a luxury brand. Don gets upset when Rachel criticizes his outdated strategy and storms out, much to his boss Roger's chagrin. At the next meeting, they present to Lucky Strike cigarettes, their biggest account. They are concerned that the government's regulation of cigarettes will hurt their business. Don has no ideas, so Pete steps in and suggests that they use the public's death wish to advertise, something one of their researchers had suggested to Don earlier. This offends the clients, and they're prepared to walk out. However, at that moment, Don gets an idea. With health claims about cigarettes being outlawed, they have the opportunity to create an entirely new campaign. He comes up with a new idea right on the spot.
And so, gentlemen, in baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. But 3 lucky strikes, and you're in.
Just kidding. He actually comes up with the idea for It's Toasted, saying that advertising is about creating a feeling of happiness in the consumer. Though successful, Don is mad that Pete took the research from his trash and tried to one-up him in the meeting. He admonishes Peggy for allowing him in his office and for flirting with him, but says that they'll get a fresh start tomorrow. He then goes to meet with Rachel Menken for a drink, trying to patch things up from his earlier outburst. They discuss love, with Don cynically stating that romantic love is just an invention to sell products. However, Rachel sees through his attitude, saying that despite what he says, Don is an outsider just like her. At the same time, the guys gather for Pete's bachelor party. He comes on way too strong to one of the girls there who rejects him, and this, along with Don's criticisms, have him feeling down. He then shows up drunk to Peggy's apartment, and they end up sleeping together. At the end of the episode, Don takes a train out of the city to his home in Ossining. There we're introduced to his wife, Betty, and his 2 children, and we realize that there's a whole other side to Don that we didn't realize before. Overall, I think Smoke Gets in Your Eyes is one of the stronger pilots I've seen. The background of how Matt Weiner worked for years to get it made is almost legendary by this point. And there are a lot of hints in this episode for what the series will be about. We see Don's Purple Heart that he won in Korea, though very thematically, the heart has fallen out of the box when he picks it up. We also hear the faint noise of bombs when Don is napping, again hinting at his backstory. The title of the episode is, as far as I can tell, based on the song of the same name from the musical Roberta. The song doesn't appear in the episode itself, but it's about love and pain, which is very thematic to the series. The episode also shares the name with an episode of Homicide, Life in the Street. I'm not going to do any kind of Easter egg or reference section for this retrospective, because Mad Men is so full of historical references and details that I would just never be able to catch them all. However, I will point out that the picture that Pete has of his fiancée is not the Trudy that we know from the series. It's actually Matt Weiner's mother, as the pilot was filmed almost a year before the show got picked up, and they had not cast Alison Brie yet. The same thing is true of Sally. I don't think this is Kiernan Shipka, as she's not credited on IMDb or in the credits of the episode. The It's Toasted ad is a real one used by Lucky Strike. However, they actually started using it all the way back in 1917, a little bit before Don's time. The episode was directed by Alan Taylor, with cinematography done by Phil Abraham, both of whom had worked on The Sopranos with Matt. In fact, most of the people who worked on this episode had previously worked on The Sopranos, as principal photography was filmed at Silvercup Studios, the same studios where Sopranos was filmed at. But now it's time to get into the characters, starting with everyone's favorite madman, Donald Draper.